It mentions the defamation lawsuits Ethan Klein and Mudahar filed against Noah Samsen. That's a direct legal consequence.
But does it link it to violence too?
It does. The source draws connections between this kind of rhetoric and specific acts of violence.
Such as?
It cites the case of Elias Rodriguez, who randomly shot 2 Jewish people near the Israeli embassy. Also, an Egyptian individual throwing a Molotov cocktail at a pro-Israeli mart.
And even a murder.
Yes, the murder of Melissa Hortman, a Democrat who had voted against state-funded medical care for illegal immigrants. The source connects these dots.
Anything else? Targeting families.
Yeah, Hassan's fan base is accused of calling Child Protective Services, CPS, on Ethan Klein.
CPS? On what grounds?
Claiming his children were crawling in dog feces. A pretty nasty tactic.
And what about protests, like the LA riots meant?
Right. The source describes those events starting as mostly peaceful protests against Trump's border policies, but then escalating.
Escalating how?
Into looting, burning cars, attacking reporters and police, blocking traffic. And the source notes Hassan Piker was actually present at some of these events.
He was there.
Yes, reportedly supporting the protesters and admitting many were his viewers.
That really drives home the connection between online words and offline act. It's sobering.
It really is. The source presents a strong case for these digital actions having very real, sometimes tragic, tangible consequences.
Which raises questions about the platforms themselves, right? YouTube, Twitch.
Exactly. The source points out what it sees as major inconsistencies or double standards.
How so?
It claims creators promoting violence often face few, if any, real consequences from the platforms, while others get banned for much less serious offenses.
What about money, monetization?
Another point of criticism. The source highlights perceived hypocrisy. Figures like Noah Samsen and Hassan Piker criticize others for monetizing conflict.
No.
But they themselves use multiple monetization methods. Patreon, brand deals, ads, the work.
Any specific examples?
Noah Samsen is accused of sponsor-shaming Ethan Klein while taking sponsorships himself, including from companies like BetterHelp, which the source notes has faced its own conflict.
So, for you listening, reflecting on all this, it really makes you think about the power of online narratives, doesn't it?
Absolutely. How easily information can be twisted, and the responsibility that lies with both the creators putting this stuff out there and us, the consumers, taking it in, especially in this super polarized environment.
Yeah, what really stands out is how quickly these online things can seem to escalate into real-world harm. It's not just words online.
Not at all. The core insight here, from the source's perspective, is how some online figures seem to use selective info, emotional appeals, maybe coded language to build an audience, potentially radicalize them.
And that digital talk can translate directly into lawsuits, harassment, even physical violence.
Yeah, like a dangerous pipeline from the screen to the street, source presents.
Okay, so we've looked at personal conflicts, online incitement. What about broader societal friction? Culture, economics, identity. The sources touch on that too, right?
They do. They delve into what the source material portrays as efforts to challenge or, cancel various words, symbols, and even traditions.
Like what kind of things?
The source gives examples like the phrase "good morning," some claim it comes from slave master, or the OK hand sign, which got labeled a white supremacist dog whistle.
I remember that one. Any others?
Rule of thumb supposedly linked to wife beating, even things like dreadlocks framed as cultural appropriation.
It extends to holidays too, according to the source.
Yeah, Halloween, Christmas, the 4th of July, all presented as targets for criticism within these discussions, the source analyzed.
And how does the source interpret these challenges?
Generally, it views them as tactics aimed at spreading racial division or used to gain special privileges. That's the perspective offered.
There was also a specific incident mentioned, Camp Mystic.
Right, the Camp Mystic controversy. A tragic flash flood killed several children there.
And the controversy was?
A person named Sadie Perkins claimed online it was an all-white only Christian camp. And the source says she implied the deaths were somehow justified because of the parents' choice.
That's a horrible thing to imply. Did the source check her claims about the camp?
It did. It provides counter-evidence, including photos showing non-white children at the camp, arguing it wasn't white-only at all.
What about Sadie Perkins herself?
The source describes her as having a criminal record, including assault charge, and says she threatened violence when people confronted her about her statements online.
And that empathy theme comes up again here.
It does. Apparently, Sadie Perkins also claimed to have empathy, which the source uses to reinforce its argument about how that word is sometimes used deceptively. It's a recurring pattern they highlight.
Okay, shifting to economics. The source has some strong critiques there too, particularly around welfare.
Very strong critiques. It argues that some able-bodied people are abusing welfare benefit, things like EBT Medicaid.
How does it frame this?
As looting taxpayers to support, quote, lazy people or irresponsible choice.
Does it give specific examples?
Yeah, it mentions individuals complaining online about cuts to EBT or Medicaid funding. Also, the cost of elective procedures like testosterone treatments being covered. And even people refusing to pay taxes, using slogans like no taxation without representation, despite not being taxpayers.
What about healthcare costs in general?
The source points fingers at Obamacare, blurring it for doubling or tripling healthcare costs and finding people who didn't have insurance.
And emergency rooms?
It alleges that illegal immigrants disproportionately use emergency rooms for free healthcare, which drives up costs for everybody else. That's the claim.
There's also mention of hotels and migrant shelter.
Yes, what the source calls a corrupt business wealth transfer. It claims hotels facing bankruptcy are converting into migrant shelters.
And getting paid well for it.
Extremely well, according to the source, receiving premium payments from the government, supposedly up to $300 per room per night with guaranteed full capacity, making more money than they ever did as hotels.
And foreign aid.
Mentioned briefly with an example of John Deere tractors supposedly involved in scams.
So what's the overall economic impact argued by the source?
It blames these behaviors for high prices and making it hard to find good jobs. It specifically argues that leftists push for COVID lockdowns, which put small businesses under, leading to the post-COVID price hikes. And that's the economic narrative presented.
Right, let's turn to immigration, culture, assimilation. Big topics. How does the source frame illegal immigration?
With significant concern. It uses terms like flooding the country. It links it to enabling child sex trafficking, drug trafficking, especially fentanyl, and allowing criminals to, quote, invade.
Does it offer any historical context on immigration stances?
Interestingly, yes. It points out that historically, opposition to open borders and illegal immigration wasn't just a Republican thing. It mentions Democrats and progressives like Bernie Sanders, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama all taking similar stances in the past.
What about the impact on jobs?
The source claims illegal immigrants are taking jobs that Americans want. It cites an example from a Nebraska meatpacking plant and argues it makes it harder for small businesses that follow the rules to compete.
And the cultural impact. That's a big part of the source's argument, isn't it?
A huge part. It flat out asserts that the culture and group cohesiveness of a country matters.
How does it see that being affected?
It criticizes what it sees as non-assimilation, especially regarding language pointing to parents who haven't learned English after decades here. And it worries about an influx of, quote, random values that run in opposition to the core principles of America.
Like what values?
It specifically mentions Sharia law and its implications for women's rights as an example of conflicting values.
The source brings up protests in Mexico. That seems relevant here.
Yeah, it's a fascinating point. It notes that Mexicans in Mexico are apparently protesting foreigners moving there who they feel don't respect the culture.
What are the Mexicans saying?
Holding signs like pay taxes, speak Spanish, use pesos, or get out. Kind of an ironic twist noted by the source.
So the source is critical of multiculturalism itself.
Explicitly. It states multiculturalism doesn't work and suggests that efforts to break down traditions are actually a tactic.
A tactic for what?
To make everyone easier to control by demoralizing people, removing their cultural anchors.
Finally, there's this concept of the victimhood narrative. What does the source say about that?
It makes a pretty bold claim that victimhood is the essential ingredient to fascism.
Wow, fascism. How does it connect those?
It argues that dwelling on victimhood leads people into depression and makes them easier to be weaponized for violence by those offering simple solutions or enemies.
And it contrasts this with
the idea that facing disadvantages can actually be a motivator for success. It uses a little anecdote about a girl in a rollerblading race who fell behind, but used it to push harder. And
so the core idea from the source in this whole section seems to be what?
That these cultural and economic critiques, from its viewpoint, paint a picture where societal institutions are being deliberately undermined and where individual responsibility is being replaced by this widespread sense of victim.
For you listening, these points really push you to think critically about policy impacts, right?
And about the role of cultural value, how different people see them, how important they are for a society, and ultimately about individual responsibility versus systemic factors. It makes you weigh how different sides frame what's good for society and what's tearing it down.
So we've really covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We started with those deeply personal family conflicts like Raven and her grandpa Frank.
Yeah. Then moved into that complex online world, the alleged manipulation, the incitement claims involving figures like Hassan Piker and Noah Samsen.
And finally, explored these broader societal flashpoints around culture, economics, identity, all through the lens of the source material we examined.
And throughout, the source material consistently suggests this pattern of intense polarization, where different views aren't just disagreed with, they're often demonized,
leading to very real consequences, broken relationships, the spread of misinformation, and sadly, even real-world violence, according to the sources.
It paints a picture of a digital and social landscape that's frankly really challenging to navigate, requires a lot of discernment.
Which brings it back to you, the listener. The importance of being critically aware of the narratives being pushed, the tactics being used, especially online. It just can't be overstated, can it?
Not at all. It highlights that constant need to try and separate factual reporting from emotionally loaded rhetoric, to question where information is coming from, even when it's wrapped in claims of empathy or presented as the absolute truth.
So we leave you with this thought to chew on, given how pervasive these divisive narratives seem to be.
What is your role? Your role in trying to foster understanding, make common ground, even when you profound. How do we hold on to our beliefs without letting them erode the very foundation some love function?